Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 55 of Free Real Estate Advice Friday. Hope everyone had a good week. Hope everyone has a good weekend coming up. As I like to do at the beginning of every episode, I try to plug something either local or even online businesses or small businesses. But this week, I want to do something a little different. Wanted to just plug a charity that I recently gave to, and got this great t-shirt. So I am a diehard Eagles fan. I've worn this hat several times on this podcast. I do generally dress casually on Fridays. And then I also do a podcast. So everyone's like, who's this realtor that wears t-shirts all the time? I do wear t-shirts a lot. I am a casually dressing realtor for a lot. Obviously, if I'm going on appointments and stuff, I'm not as casual, but I wanted to wear this shirt in honor of my beloved Eagles. And if you are an Eagles fan, you probably, or you definitely should know Jeff Stoutland. He's our legendary offensive line coach. The Eagles, as a lot of us know, are legendary for their offensive line. And Jeff Stoutland is the guy who is a legendary NFL coach and has gotten us there. This all started with Andy Reid, our former coach, current coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. And, kind of stressing the offensive line, but Jeff Stoutland has definitely acquired a legendary status as just one of the best in the NFL. But what's cool is these shirts that say, I'll stand up a little bit so you can see it. Stoutland University, established 1984. These shirts, anytime you buy one of these shirts, if you're an Eagles fan, it's a great thing to have. If you know an Eagles fan, this is a really great gift. They will really appreciate it because it's a very niche thing for Eagles fans. Eagles players reference Jeff Stoutland University all the time, but anyone who buys one of these shirts, it goes to the Eagles Autism Foundation. I'm going to post the link in the comments. If you're watching this on one of the avenues where my links don't display, you can just Google Jeff Stoutland University and it'll come up pretty quickly. I just looked just to try and test it out, and it definitely is like second or third thing that pops up. There's an article about it before that. That's I'm sure there's a link in that article as well. But yeah, if you have $30 to grab a Jeff Stoutland t-shirt and give to the Eagles Autism Foundation, please do so. And again, if you know an Eagles fan in your life, this is a fantastic gift for them. They will absolutely appreciate it. So that's my plug for this week. And I'm looking that link I posted in the comments. I don't know if that's going to work everywhere. It's a long link here. I'll show you. So if that doesn't work, just Google Jeff Stoutland University and I'm sure it'll come up. So, all right. So that's that. So let's talk about real estate. So, listen, the question that I get probably 10 times a week, every single week, is how's the market doing? So we try to address that on these podcast episodes as often as possible. And I want to talk about that. I realized last week when I was doing this, I forgot to put my microphone down. I do that probably about one every 5 podcasts, and I hate how it sounds. I obviously put a lot of effort into making sure that this looks and sounds good. And I noticed I did that last week. And after talking for an hour, I'm like, man, I didn't have my microphone up. You can still hear me. It just doesn't sound as good. So here's my microphone back. But let's talk about the market a little bit. Market is definitely picking up. I am slammed right now. So referencing my big board that I'm always looking at, which is basically all my most active clients, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. So 36 active clients right now. These are all people that are like looking to do something sometime soon. And the biggest thing that is holding up this market right now, despite the fact that it is really starting to pick up, is the inventory. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the inventory and how we got here. Inventory has been a problem for years. So I would say roughly dating back to maybe just like pre-pandemic, just before the pandemic hit, we've had a bit of a inventory issue. Now, right around the time the pandemic hit, literally right before, a couple months before it, is when the market went crazy. And the biggest reason for that, obviously, was the interest rates were down at 2.5%, 3%, which, as I've said many times, is something that we can all just kind of put to bed. It's very likely that's never going to happen again. I don't want to say never. I mean, obviously, circumstances change and things change and markets change and everything else. I guess it's possible it could happen again. I wouldn't bank on it. If that's something that you're waiting for to happen in order to transact real estate, I would tell you that in the short term, call it, 2 or 3 years, it's highly unlikely that we're going to get back there. I think what you will see, actually, I meant to check the rate before I started this. Let's see what it is today. The rates are generally trending down. And when I say they're trending down, obviously there's going to be a little, spikes here and there as it goes down. So it might have gone up from 5 days ago or a week ago, but generally trending down. Yeah, actually they're down quite a bit, relatively speaking. So I think the last time I reported on it on here, I think I mentioned 6.8. We are down to 6.18. Again, it always depends where you check, but it's generally, they're generally pretty similar. I'm seeing 6.18. I'm seeing 6.4 on the high side. That's as of yesterday. So, let's just kind of, split the difference, and it's down about 0.6 from last time I reported, which probably within the month. We're expecting, according to, and I say we, it has nothing to do with my opinion because this is definitely not my lane. But the experts are telling me, and that means the professionals that I work with, as well as, the people industry, I watch a lot of podcasts and informational things and web calls, like Zoom calls and stuff with experts. We're expecting this to go down about a point by May. So I would expect to continue to see this go down. So let's talk about what that means if you're waiting to do something right now. Why is the inventory low? Well, you have a seasonal aspect overlay to this, right? So every year, it doesn't matter, how busy the market is, you're going to get a little bit of a slowdown over the holidays for sure. Because if anyone's thinking about doing something, they're almost definitely going to go on pause around the holidays. I do tell people every year, if you're flexible and you have the opportunity to do something during the holidays, buy a house, or perhaps even sell a house, but definitely buy a house. If you see something over the holidays, it's a good time because a lot of people do go on pause. So if you're looking to not get bid up in purchasing a home, that's a great time to do it because a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines. And my most recent purchaser, my most recent buyer, got a great deal in Hunterdon County here. And I've told him time and time again, not only did we get a great deal on it just as is, I just mean the deal that we got was a really good one, all things considered. But on top of that, if we had waited till the spring market to get that exact same house, I can honestly say that if it were me, I would tell you, in my opinion, it would have been another 40 grand. This is a house that was roughly, mid fives. So call it 550. I said, if you had waited to the spring, or they had waited to the spring to do something, then you would have been looking at 600 because there's just more buyers. So, if you have everyone out there active at the same time, then, there's going to be more people bidding. So, if you're looking for a deal and you're flexible, then, shopping around the holidays is a great thing, great strategy to do to, kind of stay out of the fray and stay out of the chaos of the spring market. Now, as far as inventory goes, why is there less inventory? Well, a lot of people who are not necessarily on a definitive timeline, but do need to sell their home, are also watching the rates because they want the bidding, obviously. So they're looking to see what's going on in the market. And, if it seems like it's slow, especially considered what's happened over the past 2.5, 3 years, they're going to kind of hold out and wait for people to get active again. The problem with that approach is that the reason people aren't active is not because of rates anymore. It was 6 months ago. When the rates first shot up, everyone went on pause. I can speak personally to that. A lot of people just said, I'm out, tapped out, said, I'm going to wait for this to go through, good to settle down. And I told people back then, I'm like, there's no guarantee it's going to settle down. And if you're looking to be in this house for anything more than 6 years, I wouldn't worry about, short term spikes in interest rates, because you're going to refinance for sure. If you're going to be there for, 6, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you are definitely going to refinance. So, a little bit of a short term view of things that can definitely affect the ability for you to just keep active and keep on it, keep your eye on the ball, I should say, and miss out on opportunities that otherwise would make a lot of sense for you. And, it's a bit cliched in our industry, but we always say, you marry the house, you date the rate, meaning the house is what you're really committed to. You find the right house, you go get it. You do what you have to do to go get it. As far as the rate goes, you're going to break up with that rate probably several times over the course you own that house. Speaking personally, we've been in our house now for roughly 8 years. We've refinanced twice already. If you find an opportunity that it makes sense to refinance, it's a no-brainer. So we've had that opportunity twice, and we've taken that opportunity. Now, obviously, there's a larger conversation there. I am not a mortgage expert, and you have to have that conversation with your mortgage person because there are costs and fees involved. And at the end of the day, it all has to be worthwhile. But if there's going to be a pretty major shift, if you're going to drop your rate by a point or two, then obviously, in a lot of scenarios, it makes a lot of sense. So, don't let that stop you, because what's happening is people are sitting on the sidelines. Transactions are down. Sellers who are looking to sell something are watching and saying, man, people aren't buying a whole lot of houses these days. And that information is readily available. I mean, you can just Google and find that activity, or you can ask someone like me and I can provide reports to you. Transactions have definitely been down over the past 6 months. But it's not non-existent. There are plenty of transactions happening. I mean, this is how I make my living. If there were no transactions, I would be in really rough shape. But people are definitely still doing stuff. And I have told people time and time again over the past, particularly over the past 2 years, the people that really got great deals. And I talk about that all the time. Like, when we go through the process of buying a house for people, there are probably, I could easily reference like 4 transactions in my life out of roughly 100 that I still look back to, and I'm like, man, that was a great deal. We really got what that person wanted, and we got them a great house. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense that we were able to get it. It was surprising even to me that we were able to get it over the finish line. But it's just sometimes it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of the way your offer is crafted, with my guidance, of course. There's strategic considerations. There's all sorts of ways that you end up with a great deal. A lot of times it's buyer flexibility. Maybe they considered an area they weren't quite thinking about, but I said, hey, what about this area? And they did their research and they said, yeah, actually that could work for us and we'll get a lot more bang for our buck. Scenarios like that where, we're trying to get them out of a home sale contingency or whatever the case may be, where, there's 4 times in my career I can point to specific transactions where I'm like, man, we really hit it on the head that time. Now, listen, every transaction is a victory for me, and the buyers, but sometimes it's just like such a, slam dunk. I would reference this one that I'm closing most likely next week or the week after here in Hunterdon as one of those transactions where it's like, man, every time I go there, I'm like, man, this really, great deal, great house, great price, great condition of the house, perfect for my client's situation. And and actually another one that's really close to this house that I did earlier this year, another one where it was just like a slam dunk, like perfect for that client. I had one a few years ago in Port Murray, and someone who actually watches this podcast occasionally, and I'm sure as soon as I say Port Murray, they'll know who they're talking about, because I only have one Port Murray transaction, but it was just another one where it just matched up perfectly to the clients. They fell in love with that house, multiple offers, and we were able to get it done, and they are still there, and they absolutely love that house. I love every time they post videos of them and their kids and everything else at that house. It just works out really well. And then I had another one a few years back in Milford, with an old neighbor of mine, getting out of the place where I used to be their neighbor and getting into a really great situation for them. I still think back to that deal and how it went down, and It was a very challenging deal up front and actually a challenging deal throughout because we had I don't want to I always have to pause and say be careful with what I say. So let me be careful about what I say. There is a much bigger story, but I'm not going to share all of that. Let's just say the offer process up front was a bit flawed. And I had to fight really hard, including involving my broker, which I rarely have to do. We were able to get our offer accepted. And then even once it was accepted, we had some challenges in terms of getting it over the finish line. But again, these are the things that happen. These are why, in the past few episodes, I've referenced very much like what is the value of a realtor? The value of a realtor is navigating through these situations that I'm referencing when things get hairy, not only in the offer process up front, not only in getting it over the finish line and getting over getting the transaction to complete. That's a huge task. And there's going to be forks in the road. There are going to be decisions that need to be made. There's going to be very difficult conversations that need to be had, compromises, extended negotiations. You always go through 2 rounds of negotiation minimum because you have to negotiate up front to get your offer accepted, but then you have to negotiate down the road once you have your inspections, if you have inspections, which hopefully you do. So there's so much to it, and I think that's largely the part that people really don't understand. So in a market like this, you have a lot of people that are speculating, and I always tell people, don't be a real estate speculator. That's not what we're here to do. If you're buying your home that you're going to live in for an extended amount of time, don't be a speculator because it's going to cost you opportunities. And the speculation that you're doing is such a small percentage of the value that you're getting out of that house or the price you're going to pay or the interest you'll eventually pay on that house. It's a small factor if you're going to speculate short term. And when I say short term, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, a year, you're speculating at that point. You're saying, I'm going to wait for once the interest rates go down, then I'm ready to make my move. And my question is always, how much are you waiting for them to go down? If they say, 1.5, I'm gonna be like, that ain't happening in the next year. Most likely, obviously it's possible, but that would be pretty drastic. But if you start talking about like 0.5%, I'm like, look, if this is the house, don't worry about that 0.5%. That is a non-issue in this transaction. If you're thinking long term and your family could be happy in this house and this works for you and we can get it done, I'm telling you, hey, this offer is going to be accepted if we put it in like this. Do what you got to do. And again, we've talked about personal philosophies on these things and just, again, speaking personally, not as a realtor, generally speaking, in situations like this, including the house I live in now, is sometimes you have to take a calculated risk. You have to take a leap. When we bought our house, it was outside of our budget, not by a ton, but enough to, we were newly married. Actually, I have to think. We were newly married. Yeah, I was trying to think if we were actually already married. We were. So we had been married for about a year. Just starting to I shouldn't say just starting. We had actually been looking at the market for a while, just kind of educating ourselves. And keep in mind, all this is before I was a real estate agent. We had put a 2-year timeline on things, and about a year in, we started getting a little more serious. And probably maybe not for the right reasons. I mean, we were young and we wanted our house, and we didn't have any kids yet, and we wanted to just, be able to entertain and do all the things that we couldn't do in our current living situation. And we also both wanted out of our current living situation, our living situation at that time. And we started looking a little more seriously, and we looked at a bunch of houses that were in our price range, which at the time was roughly $450. And we looked at several, and none of them were, great. None of them were slam dunks for us. There were some decent options, but nothing. Every one of them had like a mark on it that we're like, this isn't quite right. Knowing that we were going to be extending ourselves to begin with, we didn't want to extend ourselves and then also get ourselves into a kind of a bad situation. But then we found the one. We found the one where we both walked in, and it still needed some work. It just needed aesthetic work. Other than that, it was beautiful. But what we really loved was the piece of land it was on, and the lot itself, and what they had done with the outside, and it had clearly been maintained very well. Yes, it had some other things like wallpaper and light fixtures and stuff that we knew we were going to change. It needed paint. And that stuff's fine. We knew we could take care of that, but it was outside our range. It was 500,000. We were looking at 450, and that was a big difference for us at that time in terms of down payment and everything else. And at that time, back when that was happening, that was 2014. That was the whole 20% conversation, right? So you hear that talking point a lot now. While we're waiting until we have 20% saved up, people tell me that all the time. And I say that's not as much a thing anymore as it used to be. Listen, if you can do it, great. You're just putting equity in the house. That's fantastic. But the majority of people don't put 20% down anymore. Most people are putting down 10%, but you can get conventional loans for 3.5%, 5%. And PMI, which is the reason everyone always said the 20% is like a hard rule because you won't have to pay PMI. PMI has gotten so much cheaper over the years that it really isn't the obstacle it used to be. Ideally, if you can get down that 20%, great. That's like kind of a luxury at this point, in my opinion, especially if you're a younger buyer. It really isn't as important as it once was. So if that's kicking around your head, then I would say let's talk about it. And when I say I'll talk to you about it a little bit, maybe even from a personal perspective, but definitely talk to a mortgage rep because they can just give you actual numbers that justify why that's not as much of a thing anymore. To give you a rough idea, when we bought our house in 2014, we paid 500,000. We put 10% down. Our monthly cost of PMI at that time was $380 a month. And if you know anything about PMI, or I believe it's, so PMI, our mortgage payment total with the PMI was like $3,800, I want to say at the time. We had a decent rate, lower than they are now, but not, bottom rates. Like it wasn't 2.5 or 3%, but it was low. Our PMI was about $380 a month. To give you an idea, if you don't know anything about PMI is not really here to help us out. It's really to protect the mortgage company in case we just stop making payments. Because we didn't put as much down, they're protecting the fact that we could just stop making payments and put them in a bad situation where they're probably going to have to short sale or foreclose or whatever and lose money. PMI protects them from that money in between. That is a completely non-technical and perhaps even flawed explanation of what PMI is. And again, talk to a mortgage professional if you want to know a more detailed version of what PMI is, or Google it or whatever. But it was $380 a month for us. Now, $380 a month for a newly married couple with, decent income, but we were stretched thin at that point. We knew we were going to be house poor. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money in your monthly payment. So that same payment today, because we looked into this when one of the times we were refinancing, is about $75 a month. That's how much that conversation has changed. In my opinion, that's a profound difference. So, that 20% conversation is a bit flawed. It's a bit dated. There are a lot of conversations in real estate that are dated, which again is why you want to consult a real estate professional, because, this is not meant to be disrespectful to anyone. But I think what happens most of the time is there are people in buyers' lives that are giving them information. That information they're giving them is based on the fact that they bought a house 25 years ago and these were the rules, right? Those people have not, admittedly, not bought or sold a house in that 25 years. They've gotten a little out of touch. That is perfectly, that is super expected. And that's fine. I mean, there's no expectation from a real estate professional like me that you would know all those things, but I'm here to get you caught up, because unlike someone who hasn't purchased a home in 25 years, as I always say, I purchase, roughly, purchase and sell 25 to 30 homes a year. So I have a little better idea of, these types of trends and these types of conversations. So, what's happening right now with the inventory situation is a lot of people are looking at these things and they could be slightly misinformed and holding out. I have sellers that are waiting for the activity to go up. So when they do go to market, they're going to have a lot of activity. I am telling you right now, the inventory is so dreadful that if you list a home right now, which means it's going to close, and most likely if you listed it right now, you're looking at probably late March, early April, by the time it's done, mid-April, somewhere in that range. You're in the spring market. The inventory is so dreadful. I promise you that there are buyers waiting, because I have a board full of them right here. They just can't find the home. So That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're a buyer, there are a few homes. I mean, we're still selling homes. There's just not as many of them. If you are a buyer, keep at it. The biggest thing right now is keeping your eye on the ball. I've been saying it for 2 years. It has only gotten more exaggerated as a point of saying, stay on the course, because on any given day, you wake up on a Tuesday, or today, Friday, you wake up on Friday, and in your emails, the email from me with the new listings that are being sent to you, and there it is. There's the home. That's the perfect one. Now, if you've taken your eye off the ball, first of all, you might have missed my email. Second of all, you might have drug your feet in terms of getting your pre-approval done. You may have not considered other variables that need to be ironed out before you make a move. And there goes that house. And guess what? You may not have time to figure all those things out before that house is going to be off the market. That's the situation right now. So it's kind of become this like Zen-like process of saying, I'm going to be ready and I'm going to stay ready, but I'm not going to get discouraged by the fact that there's so little inventory. I think what also happens a lot, and this has always been a thing, especially if people have limited budgets, is going too deep looking for the home. When I could just sit here and tell you, look, you don't have to keep looking on that 8th and 9th page of Google results. The house that you were looking for is not there right now. And that's the fact. You can, I think what happens in our profession quite a bit is people, I look for loyalty from my clients. I generally don't ask them to sign anything. We do have brokerage agreements where if you say, Craig, I need to buy a house, I'm going to say to you, hey, would you mind signing this form just to say that you are working with me? That doesn't mean you can go to an open house on Sunday and buy a house with somebody else, because I'm going to be putting time into you, a lot of time. And I just ask for that loyalty back. I generally don't ask my people to sign buyer's agency agreements. I just ask for that loyalty. So what ends up happening are two things. Number one is people are sending me listings from that 8th or 9th Google page and saying, Craig, what about this house? And I look it up and it's 300 days on market, sold as is, code violations. The buyer has to do all the certificate of occupancy and only FHA loans, only renovation loans, like really challenging and not ideal situations. And the other thing that happens a lot is they just go to the next realtor to see what they have. Well, what they have is what I have. We have the same houses. That's the biggest misconception. But sometimes you just, especially in this market, just have to be comfortable with the fact that there's just nothing available right now, but you just have to stick with it. So the in the past few years, again, thinking back to certain transactions over the past few years, the people that were the most rewarded in this market, and the market really hasn't changed all that much in the past 2 years, are the people that just stuck with it. And they took a few lumps because they went and looked at a house they thought was the perfect one. And then we got there and they're like, oh boy, this isn't going to work. And some people leave that showing where they're like, finally, we found it. 6 months in the making, we finally found it. And we go to the house and it's just not right, because you're not going to know until you walk in that front door. And when you walk in that front door, you will know immediately. And some people walk out of that showing discouraged, like, I can't do this anymore, I'm giving up. And other people, we have a conversation, we walk out and say, hey, look, it's not the house. It's fine, and maybe the next one is the house and we don't get it. But the house that comes after that could be the actual house. And that's the people that have been rewarded in this market, the people that really kind of stuck in there and just kind of, let the emotions sit aside for a little bit and hang in there, be prepared, take a few lumps, and are rewarded with a fantastic situation. Clients of mine, good friends of mine in Highland Park, got an awesome house. We looked at I want to say three prior to that, all in Highland Park. And, each of them just had a thing that just wasn't quite right. And there's no such thing as a perfect house. We tell people, the standard you should be looking for is your 85% house. It covers 85% of what you're looking for, because you're going to find that almost every house, that's the story. Do clients every once in a while, like, literally find their 100% house? I mean, I guess it happens. It's just pretty rare. So my clients in Highland Park, they really kind of hung in there, and I kept saying to them, just hang in there. And this is on a week to week basis, right? And sometimes 2 weeks go by and nothing's coming, like no encouraging signs, nothing in their price range is popping up that even looks interesting. And that can be extremely discouraging to just constantly, like, you want to make it happen, but there's just nothing available. And then what do you know? The next thing you know is the opportunity comes along and you're ready. And so that's what I'm going to continue to preach to people right now is, rates are kind of going down, but if they bottom out, and bottom out is a relative term. Like, let's say they go to 5.3 by springtime. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to be bidding against everyone. Everyone's going to be back in action. So just know from my perspective that if you think about what's happening right now with this inventory situation, is when a new house pops up, like I have two new ones coming up. I have one in Union Township here in Hunterdon, and I have another one up in Hawthorne. And I should say that because actually the listing agreements aren't signed yet, but I'm anticipating those are my next two listings. They're both, personal referrals, and those are a little different. I would never say that about something where I just have like a listing appointment or something, but in this case, these are personal referrals. So I'm assuming that these are my next two listings. But let's say that I know both the houses. They're both really nice, and they're both going to do really well. But let's say the one here in Union Township, that house is going to hit the market, and it's a pretty common home here in Hunterdon. It's like a colonial, and it's very nicely done. It's on the bigger side. It's something that is very desirable in Hunterdon. We transact a lot of those in Hunterdon. And when that hits the market, I guarantee you there are going to be many people that are like, that's the house. That's the one we've been waiting for. It's in a really nice neighborhood. It's in a good school system. It's a place where people are always trying to get that doesn't have a ton of inventory at any point, let alone right now. When that hits the market, this big board that I always reference with all my clients, I could pick out 6 people right on there that are going to be all over it. And I'm one realtor. There are a lot of realtors around here. So all of us have these clients that are getting these emails. And when that listing hits the market, it goes out and, you're flooded with calls. There was one here in Pittstown that I had sent to a client of mine, nice ranch, decent price point, beautiful piece of property, on a very well-known road. Just, great listing. And, they were just slammed in the process of 2 days because nothing like that had popped up in a second. It had been a while since something like that had popped up where, you were going to have a wide swath of people that really wanted that property. So if you wait to the spring market when, I have my board with my, 5 or 6 people that might want that house. But when you hit the spring market, my board's going to be up to 50 people, and it's not going to be 5 or 6 people. It's going to be 12 people that want that house. And again, I'm one realtor. So, if you're a buyer, be aware of that. Now, listen, if that's how it all plays out, and I'm your buyer's agent, and we're going to go up against, 40 other interested parties and 15 offers. Listen, I'll go to war for you. And I've touted my success rate for many years, and all of this craziness, I'm very proud of my acceptance rate of my offers. And that is a very strategic approach, and it's something that has evolved over the years, and it's something that I've really worked hard on. And that goes to getting your offer possibly accepted. And if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. But if you're ready ahead of time and something pops up and other people aren't ready, guess what? That bidding's a little bit easier. I mean, pretty much everything is multiple offers now. So like, we're always going to deal with some version of that. Even this one I just referenced, my most recent one, there were 4 offers, and the negotiation is a story in and of itself. I don't want to talk about too much because obviously it's very recent and it's not closed yet. So it's closing soon, but it's not closed yet. So I don't want to say too much about it, but let's just say it was a pretty complex negotiation. And then the second negotiation, like I referenced with the inspections and everything else, also got relatively complex. Complex being relative. Complex to me, no. Very standard for me, but complex in terms of, conversations with the clients and kind of letting them know, like, on both sides of the transaction, buyer and seller, navigating the emotions and everything else is, always a little more complicated. So, for me and the other agent, I had a fantastic agent on the other side of this one, which I'm always very thankful for. And, we had to work together quite a bit to just kind of manage things. And that's pretty normal, especially in this market. So, you know, I've talked so much about the value of a good realtor in prior episodes over the past few weeks, and these are the things that you need to consider, and being very strategic. And even this conversation I'm having now of like, there's no inventory, so we're going to hold out. Why hold out? There's no reason. Here's a question I get all the time. Should I get my pre-approval now because they expire, right? I mean, not really. So if you're in a relationship with a lender, and I can't speak for all lenders, I will speak for like some of the ones that I prefer, which is my most preferred. I shouldn't say my most preferred. My most frequently worked with, and the people that I do a lot of business with, Movement Mortgage. It's a very strategic relationship. It's generally a long-term relationship, but they are extremely strategic in that they're going to get you pre-qualified up front. And you could tell them, look, we're actually probably not going to buy for 18 months, but we want to get an idea of where we stand right now. So a lot of times you have that conversation, you submit all your paperwork and your tax docs and your pay stubs and everything else, and you come out with an outcome. And, two things happen. Number one is it's less than you thought. You qualify for less. More often what happens is you qualify for more. And then there's a side conversation, right? Like, all right, so you qualify for more than you thought. And even though you qualify to make a $2,800 payment on a house every month, should you? That's another discussion. And that goes to your personal finances. And that's for you to figure out with, the professionals you consult or your family or whatever this case may be. But at least you know what you're shopping for, right? And if you need to have that conversation, you're like, oh boy, I didn't expect that we would qualify for $550,000, and that's going to be, with our down payment and everything, that's going to come to about $3,200 a month. We weren't really planning on that, so let's talk about that. Is that going to work for us? Have all those conversations before the house is in your inbox, because that's like the biggest mistake that people make, and then it's, it hurts everything. It hurts negotiations. It hurts the emotional aspect of putting in offers and finding out if they're accepted, because if you feel rushed, it doesn't help anything. Now, not to say that, I mean, it happens all the time. People feel rushed, and I do my best to like kind of bring calmness to the transaction, and that's part of my job. It's definitely not in the job description of a realtor, but it's definitely part of my job, is bringing calmness to the situation and saying, look, here's the situation with the offer process. You guys have a lot of things to consider on the financial side that pertain to you, and I want you to make a decision that you're comfortable with. However, we have a deadline, and that deadline is tomorrow at noon. So I have to tell you that this all has to be done very quickly. Those are not my favorites. But I can do it for you. I mean, that's why I'm here for you. But I would much rather we have a conversation up front before the house gets in your inbox about what exactly we're looking for, and that everyone's comfortable. So, being deliberate during this market, you have the time. It's just that long periods of inactivity and discouraging, listings coming through and going to showings and just not being impressed by anything and feeling hopeless. And then suddenly it's happening. And I can't stress enough, like how common that scenario is. I'd almost say the majority of transactions. So I think what you're going to see in the coming months, and I keep telling people this, is inventory is going to be creeping up. I think as people start to buy that inventory, that the transactions are going to start going up, and then people are going to get more comfortable that the market is back, and that we're going to see more inventory. We're going to see more sales. Once we see more sales, more sellers will say, oh, market's back, let's put the house on the market now. You get a lot of people, like some clients that are coming up for me, they're moving out of state. They're already under contract on their new home, but they're not in like a huge rush. So, listen, if they can get their price now, then great. but they had some flexibility. They were able to wait. There's a lot of people like that, especially here in Hunterdon. We definitely have like kind of a turnover happening with demographics and whatnot. There are people that have been in Hunterdon County, starting in the 80s, and it's time for them to move on to something new. And here we are in 2020. People that moved here in the 80s and 90s, or even the 2000s at this point. Kids are out of the house. Things have changed. You look at a town like Clinton, people tend to stay longer because the houses aren't quite as big. But you look at Union Township, Franklin Township with the big colonials, the 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. They don't stay too long after the kids leave the house. The kids are only in the house for 20 years, or hopefully, we all hope as parents that it is only 20 years. But for the most part, they're not going to need the 3,500 square feet when they're in their 60s, and that Hunterdon County is definitely seeing a lot of that right now. So, but on the flip side of that is those people generally have flexibility. Like, they don't have to do it. They just think they know it's the right move and they will do it. But they have that ability to kind of play the market. So I would say, listen, if you're within a year of doing it, then just do it. Especially if you're a seller right now, because you'll be fine. But if you are, looking longer term, like you have 5 years to play with, you're 60 years old, you're in good health, things are seemingly fine. You still enjoy your house. Maybe you just don't want to leave it for nostalgic reasons, whatever it may be. And you have 5 years to play with, then go ahead and, if you want to speculate a little bit, go for it. But if you're within a year, don't speculate. It's just, it's too unpredictable in the short term. And the shifts are so small that at the end of the day, it's a marginal difference in what you'll end up with. So yeah, we had this big pause over the past 6 months. Then we had the holiday season, and now things are starting to act up again. And I will speak personally here. I am getting a lot more calls. I am getting people that are getting a lot more serious. The people that say they want to close in the spring, well, they got to get started now if they're trying to close in the spring. So we're definitely seeing that start to happen. But, more than anything else, every person's situation is different. Every seller, every buyer, every situation is different. The context that I'm giving you here is extremely generalized. I'm talking about market conditions. I'm talking about local conditions, because obviously Hunterdon County, generally speaking, is kind of out of the national conversation. It's a very unique market here because, we're less population density. Prices of houses are generally higher. Taxes are a little bit lower, but we don't have a lot of, necessarily like corporations in Hunterdon. They're Hunterdon adjacent, so there's commuting considerations. New York City is here and it's commutable, but that's a lifestyle choice for sure, because it's commutable, but it's an hour each way. So all these things are like real personalized. So my biggest advice to you is just call this number here. Talk to me about your situation. And if you're working with me already and you're watching this, which I know a lot of my clients do, just keep me informed. And most of my clients do. I mean, I go out of my way to make sure that they are telling me. We have talked about everything that pertains to their situation, because it helps me. It helps me decide, what might be a good opportunity for them and what might not be a good opportunity for them. Sometimes, a lot of times, people find their own opportunities because we all have Zillow. But the stuff comes across our radar that they might not be considering, because listen, we are the experts. So we see a house in a neighborhood that they just don't know about, or we see a price point that is, with that particular situation, is great. Like, a lot of times it's like a price point. I just talked about the home over in Pittstown. It was a ranch on 3 acres in Pittstown, and there are a lot of those, but they don't come up very often. And the opportunity to get into Pittstown, the school system, 3 acres, privacy, nice, pretty road, like all those situations at that particular price point is actually really hard. So when that one popped up, everyone just jumped on it, because it was like, these don't come up very often. Something under 500 grand with 3 acres and 3 bedrooms in Pittstown is, that doesn't happen very often. So, but those are the reasons that you keep me informed of like what works for you and what doesn't work for you, timing and price point, and bedroom situation and layout. A lot of people looking for ranches. Hunterdon County's become very popular with like retirees because you can find a ranch in Hunterdon County. Taxes are a little bit lower. A lot of them have family here, and it's a little bit of a slower lifestyle than if you're coming from Union County or Middlesex or Morris County or whatever. They come out here because it's a little bit quieter. So this is why people generally wait too long to engage me as a realtor. And a good portion of my leads are coming to me like, we're buying right now, we're ready to go. Are you pre-qualified? No. Or sometimes yes. But who are you pre-qualified with? What is the quality of that pre-approval? If you're calling me because you want to go look at a house, that's fine. Definitely help you with that. I mean, we're thrilled when that happens. It doesn't happen all that often, but when it does happen, we're thrilled. But we're going to have some conversations about how ready you actually are, because you haven't engaged me yet. So I'm probably going to say some things that you hadn't really considered. And now we need time to sort all those things out. So call me before you found the house, so we can talk about all that and be strategic and do it the right way. People always ask me when I'm listing a home, how much time do you need? And I say, well, I can list a house in 24 hours. I could list a house in an hour. That can happen. I can literally walk into someone's house, have them sign the paperwork, and it'll be listed in 1 hour. But how do you think that listing is going to do compared to if I have a runway? So what I tell people is always, I can do it in an hour. I can do it in a day. I don't recommend that. The middle option will be a week. I can do most of the things I need to do, but I can't do all of them. But if you give me 10 days, you get my full package. You get the full, the whole 9 yards of, video marketing and paid advertising and proper open house schedule and, coming soon listing and like the whole thing. And if I have that 10 days, then I can kind of stand behind the performance of your listing. If you need me to do it in less time, I can certainly do it, but you'll be making some compromises. And that's something I can't control because I need time to do the things that we do to market a home. It shouldn't take a day to market a home. That's not really a thing. I mean, if you're marketing home in a day, you're not marketing it enough. That's a fact. So it really is not that much different on the buy side, because like if in this market, with all the competition we have and all the considerations in getting an offer accepted, is you and I need to work together very strategically to know where our opportunities lie. So if you're just calling me out of the blue and saying, hey, let's go look at this house, sure, I'll take you over there and I will try as hard as I can to get you that house. It's going to help me a lot more though if I know where we stand in the process in terms of pre-approvals and considerations you've made and what your current living situation is and and schedules and timelines and all those things. So it's really the same on both ends. If you can have those conversations ahead of time. I get so many people registering on my website, and I reach out to them and say, hey, you registered on my website, just following up with you and seeing if you have any questions. They're like, oh yeah, it's all good. I'm not buying for, and then fill in the blank. Some of them say 2 years, and I say, hey, no problem at all. Enjoy the website. I'll keep in touch occasionally. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to call me. It's great that you're getting started this early because you'll really get to learn the market. And that's the truth. For that 2 years, if that's really your schedule, if you're looking at the market for 2 years, you're going to have a really good idea of what the market actually looks like and what's a good deal and what's not a good deal and inventory and all those things. However, a lot of people call me and say, hey, I appreciate you calling me. We're not quite ready yet, but we'd like to close on our new home in 3 months. I'm like, well, we don't have much time. If that's what you're trying to do, you really need to get started now. If you need to be guaranteed that you'll have a house in 3 months, there is no time to waste, because even if we can close in 45 or 60 days, which is 2 months, that's assuming that we don't have a single issue. Let's say the septic is an issue. That is going to add time that we don't have any control over. So again, you're either going to have to make a compromise on that negotiation and say, we'll move in before the septic is fixed and we'll do escrow, which the seller has to agree to, which is no guarantee. Or you need to get started earlier. But I have people reaching out. I just listed a rental. I have people reaching out to me and saying, like, I need to be out of my apartment next week. And I'm like, I mean, I can't even guarantee we can even get this done in a week. Like that's really hard. So if people that are the most common scenario is people that have a lease, but they're trying to buy. And they say, I need to be out of my, I literally receive calls in December and saying, we need to be out of our apartment in January. And I have to tell them, like, okay, I would love to earn your business and I will be helping you. However, I have to tell you, that's almost literally impossible. So you need to, in the meantime, come up, like, go to a month-to-month lease or move in with family or something, because there's no way we're closing on a house in the next 30 days, especially considering the holidays. Those are real calls that I got last month. So, it doesn't matter what your situation is. I guarantee you I can talk to it. So I would just, recommend that you have a conversation with me or any realtor if you don't want to work with me. Which, if you're still watching this at 50 minutes in, then I'm sure we could work together. But, and I see a few of you. But yeah, I mean, this market with the lack of inventory is, you got to look for every edge you get. We talk a lot about this has become a bit of a skill-based market. So for the past few years, if you were selling a home as a realtor, man, you could sell a home easily. Now, could you maximize the dollars you were going to get for it? Could you continue to earn business based on your performance on the last one? No, but you could definitely sell the home. And then it slowly became like, well, you can't definitely sell the home. You still have to do the work. And now it's a situation of, like, it's going to sell for sure. And it is definitely still a seller's market. But we're at the point now where you really have to properly market it. I just told you about a great house I bought. There were 4 offers, not 24. And it was properly marketed. So in terms of the buying side, activity is lower. Things are suppressed a bit. Conversations need to be had all along the way. It is becoming much more of a skill-based market. I have to explain to clients a lot more why things happen slower. I have to explain to them all the ins and outs of the negotiation process, which is very involved. And, it's not quite the craziness that it was then. So you need to find yourself a skilled realtor. So, that's pretty much it. And I actually have to run because I'm meeting a past client of mine for lunch. I'm very excited to see. And maybe someday I'll be having lunch with you. That would be fantastic. So hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, staying warm. I guess it hasn't been too cold. We had a little snow this week. But, take care of yourselves. If you have any questions, normally I say just go ahead and throw them up in the comments. But I'm heading out. If you have any questions you want me to address in a future episode, or any questions I can help you with in your particular situation, please feel free to ask me. Numbers here. Comment on any of the platforms you see this on, of the various it airs on, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.